Title: The Murdaugh Family Secrets, The Shocking Truth Behind Power, Money and Murder. Full documentary. The Dynasty. Before we begin, hit subscribe if you think power, money and family secrets can twist reality into something darker than fiction. And drop a comment below, because after hearing this story you'll have something to say. For a century the Murdoch name meant one thing in South Carolina: power. Not ordinary influence, unquestioned control. Judges, lawyers, sheriffs, everyone in Hampton County knew the Murdochs. 3 generations of the family had served as prosecutors, deciding who went to prison and who walked free. If they spoke, the law listened. If they pointed, someone disappeared from the story. And at the center of that dynasty stood Alex Murdaugh. A tall, charming lawyer with a friendly southern drawl and the kind of presence that made people trust him before he even opened his mouth. He wore the costume of the perfect husband, the proud father, the wealthy gentleman who hunted on weekends and donated generously to the community. His wife, Maggie, was known as warm and gracious, the type who remembered birthdays and made strangers feel like family. His youngest son, Paul, was trouble wrapped in privilege, wild, unpredictable, and protected by the family name. And his older son, Buster, quiet and reserved, living under the weight of a legacy he didn't ask to inherit. They lived on a sprawling 1,700-acre estate called Moselle. A place of shotgun hunts, bonfires, and old southern charm. But beneath the polished wood of the family lodge, something darker was rotting. It began to show the night a boat slammed into a bridge. It was February 24, 2019. Paul was drunk, everyone said it, but no one stopped him. He had used his older brother's ID to buy alcohol earlier that night, laughing as he walked out of the convenience store. Later, he and 5 friends boarded the Murdaugh family boat under the Black River sky. There was music. There was yelling. There were warnings from frightened voices on board telling him to slow down. And then, impact. Mallory Beach, a 19-year-old girl full of life and kindness, was thrown into the freezing water. Her friends screamed her name into the dark. Search crews combed the river for days. Her body was found a week later. From that moment, whispers started. Whispers that the Murdochs were covering tracks. That police reports were being altered. That evidence was being softened. Because Paul was a Murdoch. And Murdochs did not face consequences. But something else changed too, the public attitude. People began to speak, to post, to accuse. Strangers on the internet threatened. Classmates whispered. Former allies kept their distance. The perfect image of the Murdoch family was cracking. And inside the household, tension tightened like a rope. Maggie confided in friends that Paul was drinking more. That Alex seemed stressed. That something was wrong, but she didn't know what. Meanwhile, behind the walls of his respected law firm, Alex was hiding something far larger than a troubled son. Millions of dollars were missing. Not one mistake. Not one moment of weakness. But years of siphoning funds. From clients, from settlements, from grieving families who trusted him. He forged documents, moved money through secret accounts, and built a life funded by deception. Yet nobody knew. Not yet. And then June 7, 2021. The day everything shattered. Just after 10 p.m., Alex Murdaugh dialed 911. His voice was shaking. His breath sharp and uneven. My wife and child. They're not breathing. Please hurry. Maggie and Paul were found near the dog kennels on the estate. Paul had been hit with a shotgun, the second blast devastating. Maggie had been shot multiple times with a high-powered rifle. The scene was violent, personal, close range. The crime made headlines instantly. A wealthy legal dynasty. A mother and son murdered. A husband weeping, or performing. Alex said he wasn't there when it happened. That he had been visiting his mother, who suffered from late-stage dementia. He cried. He mourned. He spoke about vigilantes angry over the boat crash. But investigators would find something he didn't expect. A video recorded by Paul just minutes before he died. A video with 3 voices in it. Paul's, Maggie's, and Alex's. Alex Murdaugh had been at the scene, just minutes before they were shot. And the perfect empire of the Murdochs began to collapse. The fall of a legend. If you've made it this far, hit that like button, because what comes next turns the American justice system inside out. The Murdochs had spent nearly a century building power. Now, Alex Murdaugh was about to show the world how fast a legacy could burn. After the murders of Maggie and Paul, sympathy flooded in. The image was tragic. A grieving father, broken and bewildered, robbed of his family. But behind the tears and trembling voice, Alex was juggling secrets so heavy they were starting to crush him. Investigators were already whispering. Why would someone kill the wife and son of one of South Carolina's most powerful men? But there was another question, one that nobody was ready to ask yet. Could that powerful man himself be behind it? The community didn't want to believe it. The Murdochs had been untouchable for generations. They built courthouses, controlled juries, and shook hands with senators. But money leaves a trail. And that trail, long, messy, and soaked in greed, was about to be uncovered. Drop of blood, the double life. Alex Murdaugh's life looked perfect from the outside. But behind the designer suits and southern charm, he was a man drowning in lies. He had stolen millions from his own clients, widows, orphans, and accident victims. He funneled the money through fake accounts with names like Forge. Every check he wrote, every file he doctored, was another thread in a web he couldn't escape. And the people around him? They were starting to see the cracks. Just days before the murders, Alex's law firm confronted him about missing money, huge sums. He promised to explain everything the next morning. But that meeting never happened. Because that night, Maggie and Paul were killed. Was it coincidence? Or a desperate attempt to gain sympathy, to buy time, to shift the spotlight away from the financial storm closing in? Candle the sympathy act. After the murders, Alex played the part of the shattered husband flawlessly. He cried in interviews, held trembling hands, spoke about his sweet boy and beautiful Maggie. But investigators noticed something strange. No forced entry. No stolen valuables. No sign that a random killer had slipped in and out of the estate unnoticed. And then came the cell phone data. Alex's car GPS showed he was at the kennels, where his wife and son were found, minutes before their deaths. Even worse, a video recovered from Paul's phone captured his father's voice at that exact location and time. It was irrefutable. Alex had lied. And when police confronted him with this evidence, the once confident attorney began to unravel. He claimed he went to check on his mother. He said maybe someone else came by after he left. He said his addiction to painkillers made his memory foggy. Every answer made less sense than the last. Syringe the suicide plot. By September 2021, Alex's entire world was collapsing. He was suspended from his law firm. The financial fraud was spilling into headlines. And his family name, once untouchable, was now whispered in disgust. Then came the story that left everyone speechless. Alex Murdaugh was found shot in the head on the side of a rural road. At first, it looked like a failed assassination. But within days, the truth came out. Alex had hired a hitman to kill him, so that his surviving son, Buster, could collect a $10 million life insurance payout. The shooter? A distant cousin named Cousin Eddie, a local drug dealer. Alex survived the shot. And when police asked why, he broke down and admitted it. He had orchestrated his own death. The once respected lawyer, the patriarch of the most feared family in South Carolina, was now the center of one of the strangest criminal sagas in American history. And still, no one truly knew why Maggie and Paul were murdered. Balance scale the turning point. As investigators peeled back layers of Alex's life, the connections grew darker. Money missing from settlements meant for grieving families. Fake checks written to shell accounts. False insurance claims. And evidence that Alex had manipulated nearly every system that once protected him. But the most haunting piece of all was still the video. That small, shaky clip from Paul's phone, just seconds long, proving Alex was there that night. That single mistake shattered a century of illusion. By 2022, Alex Murdaugh was indicted for the murders of his wife and son. He pleaded not guilty. The courtroom filled with reporters, lawyers, and the ghosts of South Carolina's old power. And when the jury heard the evidence, they didn't see a grieving father. They saw a desperate man, cornered, exposed, and willing to destroy anything to keep his empire from crumbling. On March 2, 2023, Alex Murdaugh was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without parole. The Murdoch dynasty, a name that once ruled over law and order, was gone. But the story doesn't end here. Because whispers still echo through Hampton County. About missing money that was never found. About allies who suddenly vanished from the record. And about one question that still chills investigators to this day. What if Alex wasn't the only Murdoch with secrets? The family's hidden history. Before we go any further, hit subscribe if you believe every powerful family hides a secret. Because this chapter pulls back the curtain on everything the Murdochs hoped you'd never find. For most people in Hampton County, the murders of Maggie and Paul were shocking. But for those who had lived in the shadow of the Murdoch name for years, it wasn't the first time someone close to that family had died under strange circumstances. The truth? The killings in 2021 weren't an isolated tragedy. They were the final link in a decades-long chain of suspicious deaths, cover-ups, and silence, all orbiting around one family that seemed to stand above the law. Let's go back. The death of Gloria Satterfield. It started with a fall, or so they said. In February 2018, Gloria Satterfield, the Murdoch family's longtime housekeeper, was found at the bottom of the stairs at Moselle, the same property where Maggie and Paul would later die. She'd worked for the family for over 20 years, practically raised the boys, and was loved by everyone who knew her. Alex told police Gloria had tripped over the family dogs. She never regained consciousness and died weeks later from her injuries. But that wasn't the strange part. What happened next was, Alex approached Gloria's two sons and told them he'd help them get a wrongful death settlement. Money from his insurance policy, supposedly to take care of them after losing their mother. They trusted him. Why wouldn't they? He was the powerful family lawyer who had known them since they were kids. But years later, investigators discovered something chilling. Gloria's sons never received a dime. Alex had secretly stolen more than $4 million from the settlement, funneling it through fake accounts, forging documents, and pocketing the payout himself. When this came out in 2021, it added a sinister shadow over the Murdoch home. Because it meant one thing. Even death could become profitable in the hands of a Murdoch. Automobile: the mysterious death of Stephen Smith. Then there was Stephen Smith, a bright 19-year-old nursing student, kind, soft-spoken, openly gay, and loved by his family. In 2015, Stephen's body was found on a rural road in Hampton County. His car was out of gas nearby, but something didn't add up. There were no tire marks, no debris, and his head injuries looked more like he'd been struck deliberately, not hit by a passing car as the official report claimed. At first, the death was ruled a hit and run. But locals whispered otherwise. Whispers that Buster Murdaugh, Alex's older son, had some sort of connection to Stephen. Rumors said they knew each other from school, that Stephen had confided in friends about a powerful family he was close to. No one could prove it. But there was one undeniable fact. When investigators first started looking into Stephen's death, the Murdoch name came up almost immediately. Despite that, the case went cold. For years. Then, after Maggie and Paul's murders, investigators reopened the Stephen Smith case, officially naming it a homicide. His mother, Sandy Smith, said she'd waited nearly a decade for justice. And this time she wasn't backing down. They thought they could silence us, she said. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. Police Carlight: the Murdoch curse. By now, locals were starting to whisper about something darker. A curse. Too many deaths. Too many accidents. Too many stories rewritten in police reports. Let's recap. 2015, Stephen Smith found dead under suspicious circumstances. 2018, Gloria Satterfield dies at Moselle. 2019, Mallory Beach killed in the boat crash involving Paul Murdaugh. 2021, Maggie and Paul shot dead on the same property. 2021, Alex stages his own shooting on a back road. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern. Each tragedy circling the same powerful name, and each one exposing another layer of lies, greed, and manipulation. The Murdochs weren't cursed by fate. They were cursed by power, the kind that blinds people until they destroy everything around them. Candle: the legacy that wouldn't die. Even after Alex Murdaugh's conviction, his name refused to fade. Books, podcasts, and documentaries flooded in, dissecting every piece of the case, every whisper of conspiracy, every unturned stone. And quietly, the people of Hampton County began to speak out. Former clients came forward, sharing stories of missing money and intimidation. Law enforcement officers admitted they'd been pressured, subtly but powerfully, not to pursue certain leads. The dynasty that had once ruled the South Carolina Lowcountry was gone. But its shadow still lingered, in the courtrooms they once dominated, in the families they hurt, and in the graveyards that tell the real story. And yet, one question remains. A question that keeps journalists, investigators, and true crime lovers awake at night. If the Murdochs could hide this much for this long, what else is still buried?